For more on this, I'm joined now by Nicole Smith. She's with us in the studio. She's a research professor and senior economist from the Center on Education and the Workforce at Georgetown University. Nicole, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about those statistics that I just ran down. If you had to rank the economic challenges facing the African American community, where would you start?
Well, I would say in one phrase, it's economic power and economic opportunity. And we know for a fact that over the last, decade or 2 decades, the recession, the Great Recession of 2007 has left all Americans disenfranchised and disadvantaged from having lost jobs, from having lost economic power, from having lost their homes. But the African American community was especially hard hit. And when it's very difficult to recover from that when there's no wealth and there's no opportunity to sort of find a cushion or find an opportunity to build yourself once you've been struck that hard.
And we talk about the fact that throughout history in the United States, which is granted a fairly short history compared to other countries, generational wealth has been passed down differently among African Americans than Caucasian Americans. How does that contribute to this trend that you're talking about?
Well, that's certainly true. And if you think about your wealth as your economic talents, I'm going biblical on you here, and this talent that you've been given, and you can accumulate that and you use it to build for the next generation, we find that if there's nothing to give to the next generation, then that generation starts off not at zero, but sometimes at negative. As statistic for you is that the average African American household actually only has about 6% of the wealth of the average white household today. So what that means is it's much more difficult for those students to have access to pre-K education, to post-secondary education, to opportunities for jobs. They make a lot of decisions based on what their economic circumstances are in the current.
Sort of a survival rather than
it's
thriving.
Every day you make a decision.
I think about geography in the United States, which of course was affected by the Civil War, affected by the legacy of racism. Do we see the statistics change, whether it's the southern United States, the northern United States, east, west? Do we see that play a role?
Statistics and geography are certainly very highly correlated. So once you look at the southern United States, for example, all of the types of stereotypes that we're talking about are actually much more significant.
And of course, this is an area of the country that was pro-slavery prior to the Civil War.
And it's much more difficult for those opportunities to bear themselves out. We found that if you had to summarize some of the challenges, we can go back to education. There's challenges to completion. There's challenges to attainment. There's challenges to obtaining jobs that are going to give you that economic power and that economic wealth. And those challenges have not changed significantly over the last 10 or 20 years, albeit it's true that maybe those challenges are also getting more significant because the black-white divide on education is actually accelerating over time.
And what do you attribute that to?
Well, it's part of it has to do with access. So we find that even though more and more Americans are entering college, the American college experience is even more segregated than it was in the past. If you look at the new college graduates or the new entrants into college, we find that 82% of white Americans, of all new white American applicants, are entering the 462 most selective colleges. And we find that 68% of African Americans are much more inclined to go to open enrollment institutions. So we immediately find that access differs, opportunity differs because of that access, and then you can think of what types of jobs you can get also differs. If you look at the first earning for African Americans compared to the first earning from the first job for white Americans, there's a $15,000 difference, and that has to do with the types of majors people pursued and the type of institutions they pursued those majors in.
So I think it's important for you to keep spreading that message. There's still a lot of people that need to hear that may not really realize that. Where are the opportunities now? I mean, the statistics we heard was fast-growing entrepreneurship, but that could just as easily be because they had to come so far to begin with.
Well, necessity is the mother of all invention.
Indeed.
And when you have a community that's often very strapped for cash, very strapped for moving forward, that they need to do something to generate that opportunity. And this is where we get these, these very positive statistics on Black entrepreneurship. We, however, find that of all businesses in the United States, only 2% of them are Black owned. For a population that's 11% of the entire community, it's still not enough, but we're getting there.
All right, Nicole Smith, thank you for that ray of hope. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.